What's up, YouTube? My name is Jasmine. If you have never been in my channel before, I cover cases on missing and murdered Indigenous people. And on today's episode of the Slain Project, I'm going to be going over the cases of 3 missing First Nations teenagers. They are Lucas Degerness from 2007, Denny Poole from 2016, and Colton Fluery from 2018. Now, 2 of these boys went missing from Prince George, which is along the Highway of Tears. All 3 of these cases are really bizarre, and all 3 are missing without a trace. With that being said, let's get right into it. Lucas Degerness was born on January 29th, 1993, and was 14 years old when he went missing from Prince George, BC on June 7th, 2007. Lucas, his mother Georgina, also known as Gina, and his baby sister had just moved from Edmonton to Prince George when he vanished. Lucas goes by the nickname Luke. Gina had stated that Lucas was involved with a bad group of kids and gang activity in Edmonton. He would hang out every day at the Millwoods Town Center with friends in a part of town known as the Murder Woods. It was called this because of the high crime rate. But one day, Luke stopped hanging out there and Gina discovered he had inquired about joining a gang. By joining a gang, Luke would have gotten protection if someone was bothering him. Gina never learned why Luke stopped hanging out with his friends at the town center. She then decided to move back to her hometown of Prince George, hoping to save Lucas from joining a gang and keeping him out of trouble. In Prince George, Lucas and his family stayed with relatives. His mom, Gina, was struggling to find them housing. Fred and Lorena Perry are Lucas's aunt and uncle and are who the family was staying with. Lorena is Gina's sister. Lorena said that she would spend the weekends with Lucas watching scary movies and eating popcorn. On the morning of his disappearance on June 7, 2007, Lorena said she saw Lucas leaving for school and told him, "I'll see you later, bud," before he left. Moving from a large city like Edmonton to a smaller Prince George had to have been a very drastic change for Lucas. He more than likely was a little upset about the move, and as a result, his grades were slipping. The family had been in Prince George for about 3 months when his mother Gina was summoned to the school on June 7th for a meeting about Lucas's grades. Luke's grandpa gave him and his mom a ride to the school that morning. Luke had asked his mom if they could walk because he wanted to talk to her about something. She said no because it was raining and it would be about a 20-minute walk. This is something Gina regrets because she never learned what he wanted to talk about. Their current living situation more than likely did not afford them the privacy to have private one-on-one conversations. At the school, the pair met with the vice principal, and it was determined that he needed to complete summer school to catch up with the rest of his class. When the meeting concluded, Luke was told to go to class so the vice principal and his mom could finish up the meeting. Afterwards, Gina and the vice principal went to check on Lucas. It was then discovered that he left the school instead. They searched everywhere in and around the school, but were unable to locate him. Gina then heard that Luke was staying the night at a friend's house, and she decided to let him cool off. But she reported him missing the next day when he did not come home. Lucas's uncle Fred, his dad, and other family members drove around constantly looking for him. They searched everywhere they could think of and put up missing persons flyers. His uncle had initially thought that he may have been trying to get back to Edmonton. The family tried everything they could to find Lucas, but were unsuccessful. In November 2010, about 3 years after his disappearance, the Hudson Bay Slough in Prince George was searched, but nothing of importance was found. Gina would stay in Prince George for 4 years after his disappearance before moving back to Edmonton. She was hoping that maybe she would be able to find Lucas there. In the meantime, many tips came in about Lucas. There were many sightings of him in Prince George in the early days of his disappearance, but these would not be known to Gina until much later. There were also reports of him in Vancouver and that he was working at a Costco. Gina had even called a government agency to see if Luke had ever used his tax ID for a job or social services. The worker was not supposed to tell her, but they said his number has not ever been used after his disappearance. There was another sighting at a 24-hour drop-in site for addiction help. This particular sighting turned out not to be him and was verified by a photo taken of the individual. The person had the same name and looked very similar. Gina eventually made her way down to Vancouver's downtown east side and distributed flyers. Some people said that they recognized him and even referred to him by his nickname, which is Skywalker. This sent chills down Gina's spine because this nickname was not released to the public. She felt like she was closer than ever, but she never located him. Then in April 2014, 7 years after Lucas disappeared, MissingKids.ca received a phone call by someone who they believe was Lucas. MissingKids.ca is a missing children's database in Canada and is the equivalent of what the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is in the United States. Christy Zekowicz was the director of the database at the time and said that the caller provided significant information that leads them to believe that it was actually Lucas. She also stated that he more than likely has crossed paths with people in Edmonton while he has been missing. Christy said that this call has brought in renewed hope that Lucas is still out there, but they are still very concerned for his safety and well-being. The caller wanted to get Gina's contact information, but for privacy reasons, her phone number was not given out. The caller also did not ever call back. As a result of this call, Gina put out a video to Lucas and urged him to make contact again. Luke would have been 21 years old at the time of this phone call. Also, during the call, there was an indication that Lucas might be on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Gina said that at the time, the phone calls into the center were not recorded. This has since changed as a result of the caller claiming to be Luke. Gina also said that the call center is about 90% certain that the caller was him. Gina holds out hope that this caller may have been her son. But as she looks back on the situation, she thinks it might be possible that the caller may have been someone who felt bad for her and wanted to make her feel better. That could be possible. What specifics the caller said to make the organization think it was him is unclear. But there was an article stating Lucas's nickname of Skywalker that was published on July 13th, 2012. This was about 2 years before the call came in. So if that was something that was brought up in the call, it was publicly published already. I just want to point something out here. There is a good possibility that the caller could have been Luke. Was he really on Vancouver Island? There was a podcast by Laura Palmer called Island Crime Podcast. In season 2, called Gone Boys, she goes over many disappearances of males on Vancouver Island. Some of them are Indigenous and all were vulnerable, making them easy targets. There seems to be someone or a group of people possibly targeting vulnerable males on the island. But the question is, who took them? Why did they take them? Where were they taken? And what did they do with them? I am going to link her podcast in the description box so you can listen. It is a very well-produced podcast. At the time Lucas went missing, he was 14 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and weighed 140 pounds. He liked to smoke marijuana. When last seen at the school, he was wearing a red baseball cap, a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and black running shoes. He also had a camouflage backpack with him. His family misses him dearly and hope that he is still alive and will reach out to them. His uncle Fred said that, quote, "The first star I see, I make a wish, and it's always about him coming home," end quote. Denny Poole was 14 years old when he went missing and is a member of the Degerness First Nation. He lived in Dawson Creek, BC with his grandmother and was very close to his 3 sisters. He also has an older brother. On Friday, March 11th, 2016, he asked his grandma for permission to stay the night with his best friend. He was allowed to do so as long as his chores were done. Denny made his way to his friend's home, but he had other plans in store for that night. Denny was talking to a girl he met on Facebook who lived 75 kilometers away in Fort St. John. Denny planned on going to Fort St. John and convinced his friend to go along with him. The boys began walking the back roads of the Alaska Highway in an attempt to use a shortcut. RCMP says that this was shortly after midnight on March 12th. It is not certain if they planned to walk the whole way, hitchhike, or had arranged a ride. The temperature that night was -6 degrees Celsius or 21 degrees Fahrenheit. They only were wearing sweaters and hoodies. They also did not have food or water. Being young teenagers, they probably did not realize the harm they were putting themselves into. The snowfall accumulation was about 2 to 3 feet deep in the woods. Denny's friend said that they had gotten into an argument around nightfall, which is officially recorded as 6:58 p.m. that day in Dawson's Creek. The boys got lost and turned around, and they had been walking the back roads and highway for about 20 hours by this time. Remember, they had started at about midnight the same day. Frustrated, cold, tired, and hungry, they parted ways. Denny continued towards Fort St. John, and the friend started his way back home. Denny's friend last seen him crossing the Kiskatna Bridge, which is about the halfway point to Fort St. John. I have also seen it reported that he was last seen 1 kilometer south of the bridge. If they had walked this route on the main highway, it would have been about a 7-hour walk. It is 33 kilometers away from Dawson's Creek. After they split up, Denny's friend called 911 from his cell phone at 7:52 p.m. He was calling to report a disturbance along the highway. While on the phone with the 911 operator, the friend handed the cell phone to an Asian man who pulled over to help him. This man explained that there was no disturbance and that he only pulled over to help the boy because he was acting strange. Police have stated that the friend might have been in a hypothermic delusion. This man brought Denny's friend home safely to Dawson's Creek. Denny's family learned he was missing sometime on Saturday, March 12th via Facebook message. Denny's grandma has said that she also last spoke to Denny on the 12th at about 10 a.m. He said he was walking down 8th Street in Dawson's Creek and would be home soon. But at this time, he was still lost in the forest along the back roads. The police began to search for Denny right away that night, and they drove the back roads looking for him and also looked over the bridge with flashlights. The RCMP also brought in a helicopter with infrared imaging and also used tracking dogs. I am unsure how soon afterwards these were brought in, but there was no sign of Denny. But if he was in the water, he would not be visible with the infrared. The dog also did not pick up on Denny's scent. But I read that someone said it was snowing that night, so maybe they were unable to track him because of that. Trackers from the Saulteaux First Nation were brought in and spotted Denny's tracks about 1 kilometer south of the bridge. It could be possible that he got into someone's car, or were these the tracks of Denny's friend, who was picked up by the Asian man? RCMP searched until the end of April 2016. Only after the sniffer dogs were no longer useful and the risk of outside contamination was no longer an issue, the RCMP allowed the family to search within the grid. The family and volunteer searchers totaled about 60 people. They searched the river canyon and the back roads around the Kiskatna Bridge. The searchers were very thorough. 2 sweaters, a pair of socks, and other miscellaneous clothing was found, but none of these belonged to Denny. The searchers even searched a carcass roadkill pit for any signs of Denny's remains among the decomposed animals, just in case he was consumed by them, but there was no sign there either. One of Denny's sisters believes that he may have been picked up from the side of the road, and she thinks that he is still alive out there somewhere. The RCMP also found the Asian man who picked up Denny's friend, and they ruled them both out as suspects. One of Denny's relatives were on Facebook and shared his story. They also added that the girl he was going to go meet was questioned and cleared. Police stated in a May 2016 article that they do not suspect foul play, and they urge people in the area to check their property and any buildings for any sign of Denny. Where did he go after splitting up with his friend? A strange note about this case. On Tuesday, March 15, 2016, an article was published by the Alaska Highway News, and it said that Denny was last spotted at a convenience store in Fort St. John. No exact date was given, but he went missing the previous Saturday on March 12th. This is the only source that I came across that ever said he made it to Fort St. John, so I am unsure of its accuracy. And this makes me think if he ran into someone who did harm to him. Did the RCMP exhaust every avenue of investigation? Could Denny have been lured away from his home so someone could do something sinister with him? Online predators are everywhere and can be connected to larger underground networks. I did not come across whether or not the RCMP pinged his cell phone. They more than likely did, but never released the results. But if they are saying they do not suspect foul play, they are saying that he either succumbed to the elements or simply ran away. At the time Denny disappeared, he was 5 feet 7 inches tall, 120 pounds, and he was wearing a gray DGK hoodie, black jeans, and Osiris brand skateboard shoes. Colton Fluery was born to his mother, Phyllis Fleury, on October 24, 2001. He was 16 years old when he was last seen on Thursday, May 3, 2018. Phyllis is from Whitsett, formerly known as Morristown, and the family are of the Wet'suwet'en First Nation. Phyllis is a residential school and 60s scoop survivor. The residential school system and the 60s scoop era mirrored each other on the way they worked. Indigenous children were forced to attend residential school away from home. This connected them from their families, language, cultural identities, and exposed most students to physical and sexual violence. The last federal-funded residential school closed in 1997. In the mid-1950s, a series of policies by the Canadian government allowed Indigenous children to be removed from their homes, and a lot of times, poverty was a reason for doing so. If you go back and listen to episode 20, my Highway of Tears video, I explain how the government basically designed for the First Nations people to be impoverished. The removal of Indigenous children from their homes stretched beyond the 1950s and continued through the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. This era is often referred to as the 60s scoop because the Native kids were scooped up from their families and often adopted out to white families in Canada and the United States. But Phyllis struggled with addictions for some time as an adult. As a result, Colton would grow up in and out of foster care and was in the care of the Ministry of Children and Family Development for the year prior before he disappeared. Phyllis found the strength to get clean and sober and had been for 5 years before Colton vanished. She is still sober until this day and is an outreach worker for the homeless on the streets. She hands out food, clothing, cigarettes, and shows Colton's photo every chance she gets. On Wednesday, May 2, 2018, Phyllis was working as a housekeeper at a motel in Prince George, BC. She earned her wages there and had a room to live in on the property. Colton had been living in a group home and got into trouble for fighting with another boy there. He was then brought to stay with Phyllis. At the time, Colton struggled with a meth addiction and was on probation. His mom also stated that her son had anger issues at the time he went missing. When he was dropped off at the motel room, Colton only had a bag of clothes, and he asked the social worker if he was getting his family allowance. The worker told him that they were not at that part yet. Phyllis was issued some food vouchers for Colton, but the cash allowance was not to be issued at that time. She said that Colton was a little upset over not getting the allowance and went to sleep early that night. The next morning, on Thursday, May 3rd, Phyllis was in bed when she heard Colton get up around 7 a.m. She thought he was just going to use the bathroom and she stayed in bed. But he was not in the room when she got up. She looked at the motel's cameras and seen Colton walking away from the hotel without his bag of clothes. This was the very last confirmed sighting of Colton. His mom would report him missing the next day on May 4th. RCMP sent out a media release on his disappearance on May 14th. One of the first places Phyllis checked was at her daughter Jeanette's house. Colton would often go there to see his dog Gizmo, but she did not see him either. There were several unconfirmed sightings of Colton after he was last seen. There were reports of him getting into a cab. He was supposedly seen partying at Rainbow Park in Prince George. Another possible sighting was of him hitchhiking along Highway 16 near Whitsett. It is possible he may have been trying to get to Prince Rupert to see a girl named Maggie. There were also rumors around Prince George saying that he is dead. The most promising sightings of him are from Vancouver. Phyllis has visited the city numerous times and has plastered Colton's missing persons flyers in the downtown area. He has been spotted at Oppenheimer Park, and one sighting there said he was with a blonde woman. Colton's uncle Jason said he believes Colton may have gone to the city's downtown east side because of his meth addiction. His mom stated that she thinks he got caught up with some bad people and could be being used as a drug mule or worse, such as being trafficked. She has been quoted as saying that she doesn't know if he is hiding or paying off a debt for drugs. But if he is there on the streets of Vancouver, I find it odd that he has not been picked up by police or has had his name ran in the system. Anyone who thinks they may spot Colton are encouraged to take a picture and send it to the Help Find Colton Fleury Facebook page. Phyllis thinks that he might be in the Fraser Valley because there have also been sightings of him in Chilliwack and Abbotsford. Skateboard parks in those areas have been plastered with his flyers. Skateboarding was one of his favorite hobbies. She also said that the Prince George RCMP think that he did not ever leave Prince George. No reason was given as to why they think this. RCMP is asking anyone who may have communicated with Colton through Facebook Messenger to contact them. Colton's case has been given to the RCMP's Serious Crime Unit. This could be an indication of them believing he has succumbed to foul play. An investigator on this unit straight up told Phyllis that they think Colton was most likely put into the river. Phyllis was very upset over this statement because she believes they just gave up on her son while she is doing all of the searching. She is still holding out hope that Colton is still alive and out there living his life. She will not stop searching until she knows where he is or what happened to him. When Colton was last seen, he was 16 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and 120 pounds. He was wearing a red hoodie, black jeans, red and black shoes, and he also had another black hoodie with him. He did not have a cell phone at the time he disappeared. Colton would be 21 years old at the time of this recording. And that's all the information I have for you today. Please let me know what you think about these cases in the comment section down below. And if you knew any of these boys, please share any memories of them. And I hope to see you in my next video.